Yeah, I don't know what kind of scientist you expect to be a polar scientist. So you all probably have an image of the polar scientists crawling on the ice into abysses of glaciers, something like this, minus 40 degrees, 10 Beaufort of wind gusts, and the first already freezing to the ground, the second one trying to eat his shoes or something like this. These are actually all colleagues from AVI, I have to say, and they are all alive. So they are brave men doing this, but this is not me. So if you're disappointed, please leave the room. If you will be reimbursed. So yeah, it's a tough job, and we need people we need boots on the ground to know that what is going on, and we need the in situ measurements. But we will hear more, I think, later also. I'm also not this guy here. I know him very well. Maybe you have seen the film Chasing Ice, where there was this time-lapse cameras, and you could see the flowing of the glaciers very well, which I think is very important to understand that the ice sheet is moving. Although if you fall on ice, it's a pretty hard block to fall on, but it's moving. So this is Jason Box. He's a colleague, and did this Chasing Ice video. What is he looking for? He looks very, I don't know, what could he look for? Is this the glaciers that I saw last year, is it still there or what? But I think he's only looking for Leonardo DiCaprio. Or maybe, I don't know, is this our dinner coming? I'm not sure. So this is the proof that not only the polar regions made it to Hollywood, but also Hollywood made it to the polar regions. And now they're here on the Berlinale. So this is not me, though the Greenland ice sheet. That's the main thing. Okay, this is me sitting in front of my computer, 20 degrees Celsius. I just brewed my coffee and downloaded the new satellite data. And but I will show you what this satellite data really tells us and what we can learn from it. And I have got other good colleagues who have very nice pictures of Greenland from, what is it, 80 years ago? 80 years ago approximately. So this is one glacier. It's an aerial photograph from the Karale Glacier in southeast Greenland. You see the photos from 1933. And this is how it was back then. It's a very rare sort of photograph. That's also why it's in a natural history museum. And because today it looks like this. So we have this glacier has retreated quite a bit. So where the carving front, I'll tell you, was here, it's now sort of retreated further inland. And one glacier is no glacier. Every glacier behaves differently in Greenland, but we do see a lot of ice retreat overall. So, glacier retreat. Somehow also, what does this look like? For example, here's a video of a calving event. So, which means the glacier flows from here into the ocean, and the glacier tongue, it melts from below, so it gets thinner and thinner from below, and at some point the head weight is too heavy and it sort of breaks off and tips over. Sometimes they say it's the same with scientists, but not in my. So no, but it's so you can see the very dramatic sort of flipping of these icebergs. They then sort of drift into the ocean, maybe stay there also for a couple of years, and then make their way into the ocean where they eventually melt. Another thing that was very striking was 2012. We had a very warm year in Greenland. Also in early spring, I was told that the people there barbecued in April. So, and this is just a flood event that is related to this warm temperatures and the melting of the margins of the Greenland ice sheet. And it also caused some destruction. This is a bridge close to the airport, Kangerlussuaq in Greenland. So, why do I show this? Not only because it's a nice picture, but it's also good to see the real thing, to get the basic understanding how the mass balance of the Greenland ice sheet works. So the mass balance, so we have the ice sheet. Imagine that there would be no ice sheet and we're running into an ice age, and then snow falls, and the snow builds up and builds up and builds up because it's too cold that it can sort of melt. So we got snowfall falling there, and at some point the ice forms, and by the gravity it is pushed to the sides of the ice sheet. And I did this the wrong way. And on the margins, where there's lower elevation, warmer temperatures, the ice is lost by melting. But also by pushing out the ice, as you've seen in the carving in the first video, by pushing out the ice by iceberg carving. So these are important. We have a gain of the ice sheet each year by snowfall, and we have a loss by either by iceberg carving or by melting. And these ice cubes should show you just the relative proportion. So we have 3 cubes of iceberg carvings and 2 cubes of melting. And ideally, it's like with your bank account, it should balance each other. So their net should be no changes. So it should scale. It should be the same thing. It's a dynamic equilibrium, that's how we call it. So we have the input is equal to the output. And we believe that this was the case actually from the years 1961 to 1990. So if you don't have a feeling for this time, it's approximately from hit the road jack to pump up the jam. So this is, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, okay, the Greenland ice sheet was stable, but the music went south. Yeah, I know. Okay. No, but today, so this is what we call our reference period. Today, it is very different. Today, it looks pretty much like this. So the snowfall stayed pretty much the same. But the melting increased by a factor of 2, and the iceberg carving by a factor of, 1.3, so 30% increase. And this is a dramatic imbalance, because you can see that the turnover is not so large compared to the net loss. 3 ice cubes are too much on the right-hand side. Yeah, and then the people, so this is one thing I would like you to understand, that we have 2 processes of losing mass. We have the temperature dependent melting, and also the iceberg carving. And sometimes in the media, and I think even in our flyer, we just said melting. But this is not the case. We also have an acceleration of the ice discharge. Okay, so how do we measure even the mass balance? It's a huge ice sheet. We sacrificed many of our colleagues, and it's just a point measurement what you get. So what you would need is something like a scale in the sky. You would want something that measures the mass of the ice sheet as a whole, because it's important to know the detailed changes at points, but it's also good to know the total. And this is the satellites that are used for this. The gray satellites. It's a German American satellite mission, and you can see it's not only 1 satellite, it's 2. They're trailing each other. So they're flying in a what we call low orbit. It's about 450 kilometers, and they're separated by 250 kilometers. How does this measurement work? So I will introduce you to this concept because it's really, I think it's mind-blowing. So you have the first satellite and the second one trailing the other one in a distance of 250 kilometers, okay? And they accurately measure their distance. And the distance of these satellites changes as a mass appears. For example, here, the first satellite is accelerated with respect to the other satellite. And then after passing this mass, the other satellite catches up. So it's a little bit like bikers going over slope terrain. You know, they sort of go, the distance changes depending on the hill. And this is what it happens here. And now it's absolutely over-exaggerated. It's 250 kilometers into the distance. Oh yeah, and because it's an American mission also, and they liked these names, they're called Tom and Jerry, because they sort of catch each other, but they sort of never, so they never catch each other, but they trail each other all the time. So it's over-exaggerated. The accuracy with which we are measuring this distance is the 12th digit of the distance measurement. It's on the micrometer level. It's the thickness of an average human hair is 50 microns. So it's well below the thickness of a hair that this distance, that the measurements we're measuring is, we need is useful. So you could determine from Hamburg if the Berlin bear is a Berlin bear or not, in fact, actually an ice bear. Yeah. Now, how does the data look like? So this is how the global data, it's a global data set. You can see already here a little bit Greenland, but also a kind of strange structure, which reminds, I don't know, of a contagious virus or something. But this is not the case. So just to be sure, this flu virus looks like this. So if you feel sick or so, it's rather this one. And the GRACE data is something like this. We filter the data a little bit, so we look with more blurred glasses onto it. And you can see the different signals popping out. And one very strong signal here is Greenland. So this is Greenland, this is the Bundeskanzleramt, this is the Oval Office. And yeah, so here Greenland is blue. Blue means it loses mass. This is the ultimate proof that we lose mass in Greenland, and we can quantify this very, very accurately. So how does the time series look like? So this is the mass balance of the Greenland ice sheet. So we have here, it starts from 0. Okay, it's not, it's the mass we have in Greenland. It's just a reference value. And then we sort of went like this in the 70s, and then we went up, and then sort of starting 2000, it really went down. Within the last 10 years, we had a centimeter of sea level contribution from Greenland. And I didn't say when we started the mission, it was 2002. So we only have this window with GRACE. So we're really observing these strong changes here in Greenland. But we can use models and other observations, also meteorological observations, to continue backward in time. So we're very sure what is happening in Greenland and that the losses are dramatic. So what about the sleeping giant? So the sleeping giant, of course, is the ice sheet, because we don't know, for example, Antarctica is often referred to as a sleeping giant because we think it's a rather stable ice sheet, but we're not 100% sure. We see changes going on which are concerning, and models also predict that large parts of the ice sheet could collapse in a warming climate. So this is what we consider a sleeping giant. So what's the fingerprint? So imagine an ice sheet and the Pacific Islands or any other coast in the mid-latitudes. And because it's maybe too, I don't know, abstract, we can sort of put this sleeping giant here, and we got a palm tree and the lighthouse we've seen in the earlier plot. So, and this is the sea level today. The sea level connects us. So it's one of the things that connect us, the ice sheet and the Pacific Islands. And if the ice sheet shrinks, the sea level rises. This is clear. But another thing happens. Another thing is that as the ice sheet loses mass, the gravity field in the near field of the ice sheet is reduced. So the attraction, the gravitational attraction close to the ice sheet is reduced. This would be good, for example, if you would, or if I would weigh myself in the ice sheet after it lost a lot of mass, I would weigh less. And this is exactly what we're measuring with GRACE, okay? But this also leads to the change that the sea level is deflected towards lower values, close to the ice sheet, but because it has to be a surface covering the Earth, it is increased far from the ice sheets. And this is what we call a sea level fingerprint. So you would observe the effect, when we do this, that we have a local fall of sea level, close to the ice sheet, close to the source. We have a fall of sea level, but we have an overproportional increase in the far field of the sea level, close to in the Pacific Islands, for example. So if you swallow this, I would say, and don't believe it's esoteric, I'll show you a prediction how this looks like. For example, here are the glacier changes, not Greenland, but the glacier changes. So blue means a sea level fall, and red means a sea level rise. And you can see around the coast of Svalbard, you will have a sea level fall as the glaciers decrease there. So this is just an image of the sea level change in a warming world of 4 degrees in 2100. Antarctica, it's the opposite. And both signals add up, so we have the strongest increase in sea level in the mid-latitudes. And also, we should be concerned about Antarctica because it's in fact from our perspective, the largest source, or the most concerning source, is the one furthest away. It's Antarctica. And people have used these sea level fingerprints. So you can imagine if you had records of the sea level in the past, you can reconstruct where the source of the ice change came from. And people have done this. So this it is a real thing. So I'm wrapping up. So this is the sea level curve, or its observations, historical observations. We have time here from 1700 to 2100. So we have in the prediction area over here. So we have some tide gauge measurements in the instrumental period. We have satellite data since 1992. And we can use computer models or other approaches to predict what sea level will look like. So there was a study that used satellite data and just tried to infer the curvature here of the sea level and predicted it. And they said that if they would use the present day measurements and just extrapolate it to 2100, they would be up here in business as usual climate scenario. So meaning right now, or since the 90s, we're on a curve of the sea level rise that is consistent with a global warming with the business as usual. So meaning no transformation of the energy resources. But it also shows that here this is a climate scenario where the transformation into or energy saving and also the transformation, the energy saving and the transformation to regenerative energies has taken place. And you can see that it sort of impacts where we end up in 2100, meaning our action really matters. Okay, so the take-home message, or how we call it, I want you to remember that we clearly see that the Greenland ice sheet is losing mass, and it's sort of increased a lot in the last 10 years. And there's no doubt about it, and we can quantify it very accurately, and we see a very close connection with the temperature there. Also, just if you want to be smart at a party, remember this, that the sea level falls close to the ice sheet if the ice sheet melts and rises over proportionally somewhere else on the Earth. And the third thing is that action sort of matters where we end up with the sea level in 2100. And I just came from a workshop in London where sea level experts were sitting and were trying to develop their best judgment of what the sea level would be, and across, or you can see it on the other side of the table, was this written here. So it was make it big, make it happen, make it soar. So we all thought this is sort of strange if we are sitting in a room. We don't want this for sea level. But I think it also shows something deeper, because usually companies sit in these rooms and develop all kinds of business concepts. So I think you can see the contradiction a little bit here between what we aim for with sea level and what maybe what we may aim for with an economic. But I think all these things are still true, but it has to undergo a transformative process. So that's the end of my talk, and I'll leave you with one video of my colleagues. Thank you.
Yeah, Ingo, thank you very much for this really, on the one hand, entertaining presentation, but also on the other hand side to this eye-opening presentation, because what you showed here is really what's going on, what we know from scientific research, from our research, but also takes you directly to the point what our impact is, what our action here is in respect to the global world and what's happening in other sides of the world. So we have a few minutes time for keeping question, taking question from the audience. So has anybody an important question to Ingo where he didn't understand so much what he's telling about, or if it's true or not, please be welcome, and there.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I have a question about the sea level before the 1700s. Do we have data about that, like in the Middle Ages or before? Was it the same, or was it less or higher?
So it's a pretty... Okay, thank you for this question. So it was it's a very stable sea level. It was a rise over the last 4,000 years, about of 2 millimeter per year approximately. So there is a very gradual rise since 4,000 years. But as you know, also since the ice age, the sea level rose extremely large. We have an increase of over 100 or 120 meters. But this is not to confuse with the sea level we see today, which we can sort of partially attribute to the to the global warming and the man-made global warming.
Yes, I'm coming.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
I can hear you.
Well, thank you for your presentation, and I was just curious. Maybe that's not your topic, I don't know, but not just that only because of the ice is melting that we have, of course, the rising sea level, but I heard somewhere in an article that also because the ice is melting, that like what is within the ice, kept since millions or thousands of years, is also like melting, like, I don't know, any kind of diseases or sicknesses that we thought had died out and will maybe come back because they're just like getting in contact with the atmosphere again. I don't know if that's bullshit or if it's true. So that's why I'm asking. Thanks.
Okay, maybe I'm reading the wrong journals, but I never heard about this, but it's also tendency to the biological science, I think. But what is more important from my perspective is that the melting may create feedbacks actually that will enhance again the glacier flow. So we know that the melting is also correlated with or can induce a speed up of the glaciers. I don't know, Klaus, do you have anything to add to this question, or have you?
No, I think these are stuff for good films, I think. So we do not know of any of our ice coring, what we do in Antarctica or Greenland, that there is any kind of disease or something included in the ice. So what all is trapped in the ice is the air content during the process of formation between or transformation from snow to ice. And here you see the greenhouse gases, for example, and can measure. And from this you have the direct indication what's going on in this long time period. And we can look back around about 800,000 years to ice cores in the past. And all these stories, I think this doesn't go through. A very short question, last question, yes.
I'm wondering, at the beginning where we saw the ice calving, and of course it was speeded up, but how long would that have taken for it to like melt, topple over and crash?
So the time lapse in the video was approximately 6 minutes, I think. So that's how long it takes. Or not. It's only 6 minutes. So yeah, it's the calving. I mean, the flow, you can't see really the flow, so it's of course much slower, but no, I mean the ice, that you can't see the ice flow in, but you can, the calving. But if you go to Greenland, at some places they even have warning signs for tsunamis, actually, for such a calving event that can induce like a flood that sucks you in.